Welcome to the ILC Daily Show. My name is Martin Murphy.
And I'm Salwa Kanana.
So welcome to the third day of the International Labour Conference. We just finished hearing the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, who was addressing the plenary of the conference. It's the third day of the conference and also the third day of the high-level visits. We will have 2 more days next week on the 19th and 20th. But for now, this is the end of the high-level visits this week. In the afternoon, we will have the plenary. It'll start again with the discussion of the report of the Director General, which is the report of the Global Commission on the Future of Work. Today also is a very important day. As many of you might know, it's the World Day Against Child Labor. The ILO is going to be marking the day tomorrow as well, not just today. We have a series of events planned for tomorrow. But today we're going to be talking about, later in the program, about the creation of international labor standards, how they come about, why they're so important, including the international labor standards to fight against child labor. That'll come up later in the program. But for now, we're going to start, as always, with the news. Salwa.
Thank you, Martin. Well, on day 3, of course, as you mentioned, it was the third day of the high-level visits. Yesterday morning, we had a number of heads of state and heads of government, and we reported on them during yesterday's daily show. After we did so in the afternoon, and Malta, Prime Ministers of Slovenia, Luxembourg and the UK, the United Kingdom, as well as high-level officials from the governments of Tunisia and San Marino. Now this morning, and we just heard the last address, we had the Prime Minister Holness of Jamaica, Prime Minister Dabire of Burkina Faso, Prime Minister Brnabić of Serbia, and Prime Minister Shtayyeh of the Palestinian Authority, of course, as well as Sharon Burrow, the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, and Roberto Suarez Santos, the Secretary General of the International Organization of Employers.
Thank you, Salwa. And if those of you who have not had a chance to follow these speeches online live, they are all archived in the ILO website. You can go to ilo.org/ILC, and there under live coverage you can access the archives of all those speeches. Like I mentioned when we started the show, one of the core roles of the ILO is to prepare, agree, and monitor international labor standards across a number of issues that have to do with the world of work. These are discussed and agreed by representatives from governments, employers, and workers' organizations from the ILO's 187 member states. That's done here at the International Labour Conference. This year, one of the instruments that's been discussed is a proposed and hopefully a new convention to deal with harassment and violence in the world of work. But we also we wanted to bring to you a bit more of how these international labor standards are created. For that, one of our reporters, Judith Carreras from the ILO Madrid office, caught up with the chief of the ILO's application of standards branch, Horacio Guido, to ask him a bit more how the international labor standards are created. And just to let you know that this interview is in Spanish. Let's take a look.
Como fundamentales los relacionados con la libertad sindical y la negociación colectiva, la abolición del trabajo forzoso, el trabajo infantil y la no discriminación. Yo creo que cabe hacer esa referencia a esos convenios fundamentales decididos por los mandantes de la organización y por supuesto hacer una referencia especial a la libertad sindical, un principio afirmado en el preámbulo de la Constitución en 1919 como uno de los medios susceptibles de mejorar las condiciones de trabajo y de garantizar la paz permanente en el mundo en la búsqueda de la justicia social. Por supuesto también, pero no podemos dejar de lado los convenios de inspección de trabajo, seguridad y salud en el trabajo. Señalaba uno de los ex miembros de la comisión de expertos que es fundamental poder asociarse, pero al mismo tiempo es fundamental no caerse del andamio cuando uno trabaja en una obra. Y por supuesto el convenio marítimo, que ha condensado más de 30 normas en la materia, cubriendo a más de 1,5 millones de trabajadores, dándole derechos a esos trabajadores y con un método moderno de actualización. Así que, y por qué no el último convenio, el 189 49 para el trabajo doméstico. Así que creo que con esa visión amplia, todos son de la máxima importancia, pero bueno, los mandantes han considerado que son distintos también.
Sobre todo lo que vemos con esta visión amplia es la cantidad de convenios que abordan aspectos muy específicos, diríamos, bueno, pues eso, ¿no? Del mercado de trabajo y de la realidad de los trabajos. En ese sentido, muchas veces se dicen, adoptar convenios es importante, pero su aplicación es a menudo, ¿no? donde está gran parte del reto. En ese sentido, le querría preguntar, ¿no? Pues eso, ¿cuáles son los mecanismos de aplicación de las normas? Y sobre todo aquí también, ¿qué papel tiene el diálogo social a nivel nacional para justamente hacer efectiva esa aplicación?
Totalmente, yo creo que la pregunta es muy acertada, porque al mismo tiempo que los mandantes comenzaron a adoptar los convenios y las recomendaciones de la OIT, automáticamente pensaron en qué mecanismo de acompañamiento de las normas para poder darle una oportunidad de verificar el estado de cumplimiento, como tú bien señalas. ¿Cuál sería entonces esos mecanismos de control que los mandantes decidieron poner en práctica? Y decidieron poner en práctica un sistema muy específico para el sistema de las Naciones Unidas, en el marco del cual se constituyó un sistema de control regular, periódico, de información a la organización sobre cómo se está aplicando un convenio que ha sido ratificado, que se da básicamente a través del trabajo de la Comisión de Expertos en Aplicación de Convenios y Recomendaciones, que periódicamente examina la aplicación de los convenios ratificados sobre la base de informes que envían los gobiernos y a su vez observaciones de los interlocutores sociales. Este es un análisis puramente técnico que hacen los expertos, y ese informe de la comisión se traslada al otro órgano de control regular, que es la Comisión de Aplicación de Normas, una comisión permanente de la conferencia que comenzará su sesión esta tarde, donde...
Disculpa, que es lo que conocemos siempre como el CAS.
La CAN para los hispanoparlantes, claro, pero todos hablan de la CAS.
Claro, porque muy a menudo no llega aquí y de repente ven el programa CAS y eso parece un enigma, ¿no? Saber
totalmente.
Y
sobre todo porque la CAS o la CAN, que examina el informe de la Comisión de Expertos, tiene que seleccionar, porque en los días que tiene para trabajar tiene que seleccionar algunas observaciones que surgen del informe de la comisión, y para ello tiene que sentar criterios, los ha explicitado, para elegir cuáles son los casos que va a discutir, además de su discusión general sobre las normas. Por supuesto que al más alto nivel se lleva a cabo una discusión tripartita en el marco de la CAS, con la idea de acompañar a los gobiernos en el mejor cumplimiento, en la mejor aplicación del convenio junto con los interlocutores sociales, formulando observaciones, recomendaciones y brindando sobre todo para este mejor cumplimiento la asistencia técnica de la organización, de la oficina, y fomentando el diálogo social a nivel nacional. Era una parte también de la pregunta. Hay otros mecanismos de control que tiene la organización, mecanismos de reclamaciones y quejas, y un mecanismo especial sobre libertad sindical. Hablando del diálogo social, como bien señalabas, y la importancia del buen manejo de las relaciones laborales a nivel nacional para dar una plena aplicación de los convenios. Y eso se ha dado en los últimos tiempos, inclusive con un renovado esfuerzo a nivel nacional para tratar de discutir en el marco de comisiones tripartitas nacionales cómo aplicar de la mejor manera el convenio, y en los casos que sea necesario solicitar la asistencia técnica de la OIT. Se ha dado mucho en América Latina particularmente. Se han establecido comisiones de diálogo con distintas características en varios países de América Latina con resultados bastante positivos.
Y ya algunas preguntas más referidas, ¿no?, a esa mirada de la OIT en clave presente y futuro. Sabemos que son tiempos difíciles para el multilateralismo, y esto se traduce también a veces, ¿no?, en la capacidad de adopción de nuevas normas y en los temas que esas normas, ¿no?, deberían abordar. ¿Cuál piensa usted que es un poco el papel que podría jugar la OIT en justamente dar respuesta a los desafíos que se están dando y sobre todo a las transformaciones a las que estamos asistiendo en los mercados de trabajo?
Bueno, ese es un desafío enorme el que tiene la organización en el marco de esta transformación del mundo del trabajo, con las economías en las plataformas, con la ecologización del mundo del trabajo, las distintas capacidades que los trabajadores tienen que ir ganando para adaptarse al mundo del trabajo diferente, yo creo que abre un mundo de oportunidades al mismo tiempo a la organización para reflexionar sobre eventuales normas que puedan acompañar estas transformaciones en el mundo del trabajo. Yo creo que la organización está preparada para eso, tiene mandantes preparados, capaces, y el apoyo de una oficina para ir adelante en los temas que se consideren oportunos. En todo caso, para mí el primer objetivo es este año, en el año del centenario, este posible convenio y recomendación sobre la violencia y el acoso en el mundo del trabajo. Yo creo que va a marcar un hito extremadamente importante en el campo normativo.
Y ya llegando al final de nuestra entrevista, una última pregunta. En la propuesta de declaración del centenario se habla o se incluye la idea que la salud y seguridad en el trabajo pase a ser un principio y derecho fundamental. ¿Eso qué significaría traducido, ¿no? La relevancia que puede tener, que es, o sea, si nos lo puede explicar.
Bueno, puedo intentar imaginarlo, sí. Pero sería una excelente iniciativa la posibilidad de que uno u otros de los convenios en materia de seguridad y salud en el trabajo, estoy pensando en el convenio 187, el marco promocional, convenio 155 también en el tema, puedan ser catalogados por la organización como convenios fundamentales. Nos daría una primera etapa de control regular periódicamente más cortos, es decir, hay ciertos convenios, los fundamentales como mencionaba, y los convenios prioritarios que tienen un control periódico de cada 3 años. Esto permitiría a los órganos de control tener una información actualizada sobre lo que está pasando en el mundo en materia de seguridad y salud, permitiría que al mismo tiempo generar dinámicas más eficaces, dinámicas más controladas por parte de los órganos de control, y discusiones, porque no, a nivel nacional dentro de estas comisiones, como señalábamos antes, de diálogo. O sea, se le podría dar, todos los convenios son importantes, como decíamos antes, pero el Consejo de Administración ha decidido darle una categoría especial a ciertos convenios y un control regular más periódico.
Muy bien, estupendo. Bueno, pues aquí cerramos la entrevista, no sin antes, voy a aprovechar porque veo que no lo lleva, regalarle uno de los pins, a ver si me lo puedo sacar, de la OIT a Horacio, para agradecerle justamente su participación en esta entrevista.
Nos llevamos el pin.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Hasta luego.
That was Judith Carreras speaking with Horacio Guido, the chief of the ILO Application of Standards branch. And now we have the first of today's dispatches from our correspondents roving around the International Labour Conference. Marco Minorchi caught up with employer representatives to discuss their views on international labour standards.
Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenido al noticiero del aceite. Estoy acá con el señor Fernando Illanes Martínez de la Confederación de Cámaras Nacionales de Industria de México. Bienvenido, señor.
Así es. Muchas gracias, buenas tardes, encantado de estar contigo.
Entonces, 100 años de la historia de la OIT, un siglo de vida donde normas internacionales han sido adoptadas. ¿Cuál es el balance que podría hacer de la capacidad normativa de la organización?
Es indiscutible la capacidad normativa de la OIT. Lo que hay que hacer tal vez una reflexión es qué tan necesario es continuar con esta dinámica de generar y crear normas y más normas. Me parece que hay muchos desafíos a los que tenemos que hacer frente para mejorar las condiciones de los trabajadores, para generar más y mejores empleos, que ese es, me parece que el reto más importante que tenemos hoy en el mundo. Y eso amerita hacer una reflexión, y para hacer una reflexión necesitamos estar con calma, con tranquilidad. Hay muchas circunstancias de éxito que se han presentado en el mundo, y me parece que la OIT podría ser un gran recopilador de estos casos de éxito. Se podrían generar, dijéramos, un compendio de estas condiciones exitosas para que puedan replicarse en cada país de acuerdo a sus circunstancias, y desde luego tropicalizándolas en función de las necesidades de cada quien.
Hay normas que han marcado un antes y un después para la organización. En su opinión, ¿por qué y cuáles destacarías?
Es indudable que en 100 años venimos de condiciones pues muy difíciles y muy distintas a las que tenemos hoy. Evidentemente hubo convenios que en su oportunidad pues fueron indispensables para el desarrollo organizado y ordenado de la humanidad, ¿no? El convenio de libertad sindical, el erradicar las peores formas de trabajo infantil, el trabajo forzoso, que nos parece ridículo, pero todavía lo hay y existe. Pero me parece que uno de los convenios de vanguardia, me parece que orientado hacia el futuro, es el convenio 144, el que permite y obliga a los interlocutores a llevar a cabo un diálogo social, es decir, a mantenernos siempre con una interlocución constante y permanente para la toma de decisiones y para la aplicación de la normatividad que ya tenemos, considerando pues, cada caso. Me parece que las normas, sobre todo en este momento, no se pueden manejar matemáticamente. Tiene que considerarse las condiciones, circunstancias de cada país, de cada momento y sobre todo la perspectiva de futuro. Así es que hay que apostarle al diálogo y al diálogo. Eso es lo mejor que le puede pasar al mundo.
¿A qué dificultades se enfrenta la OIT hoy a la hora de adoptar normas internacionales?
Pues sin duda a la diversidad. Me parece que las normas inicialmente se hicieron en un momento en el que había el trabajo del campo y el trabajo industrial cuando arrancó con las grandes empresas, con máquinas sofisticadas, y entonces como que la OIT y el mundo se quedó en esa fotografía. Pero ahora los empleos se están desarrollando en las micro y pequeñas empresas. Y estas micro y pequeñas, inclusive medianas empresas, no tienen esas capacidades que tiene la gran empresa. Es decir, no tiene la estructura, no tiene el capital humano ni técnico para desarrollarse y para impulsarse. Ahora necesitamos, en lugar de incorporar a la gente a las normas de trabajo, ahora hay que jalar a las empresas para ponerlas en un lugar y en unas circunstancias tales que tengan capacidad económica, material y sobre todo orientada hacia el desarrollo para el efecto de conservarse y mejorar las condiciones de sus trabajadores.
¿Cuál cree que será el rol de las normas internacionales para hacer frente al futuro del trabajo?
Cómo deberían desarrollarse y cómo se van a desarrollar. Me parece que deberían desarrollarse con mucho más flexibilidad, con mucha más apertura, considerando las condiciones reales del momento, las circunstancias de los empleadores, no solo de los trabajadores. Al final del día, los empleadores micro no son sino gente que fue trabajadora, que por alguna razón empezó con el autoempleo. Si tiene un poco de éxito, contrata un trabajador, en ese momento se convierte en patrón. Y todo lo que era a su favor corre en su contra. Necesitamos empezar a generar puentes para que esto no suceda, para que dé lo mismo ser un trabajador bien remunerado con buenas condiciones o un empleador con condiciones propicias para su desarrollo, que al final del día se encuentren en el camino. Evidentemente, tenemos que ver hacia los trabajadores. Esta es la función de esta oficina, pero con equilibrio y generando empleos. Si no generamos empleos, nunca vamos a ver por los trabajadores.
Je suis ici avec Madame Annick Hellebø, première conseillère de la Fédération Entreprises de Belgique. Bienvenue dans l'émission quotidienne de la CIT.
Merci.
Madame, 100 ans de l'OIT, un siècle de vie, de nombreuses normes internationales qui ont été adoptées. Quel est le bilan, selon vous, que vous pourriez faire sur la capacité normative de l'OIT?
Je pense que le bilan est très positif. L'OIT, le tripartisme ont montré les nombreux résultats qu'on peut atteindre par le dialogue, trouver un équilibre entre le level playing field au niveau économique, la protection des travailleurs au niveau social et récemment le nouveau débat qui est l'environnement et l'environnement pour une activité durable, donc la protection de la planète. C'est pas directement visé par l'OIT. Je pense que c'est important de se concentrer sur ces trois aspects. Et donc l'activité normative est très intense. Maintenant, il faut examiner également si les normes sont toujours up-to-date. Et donc c'est pour ça qu'il y a un mécanisme de révision qui a été lancé. Je pense que c'est très important que l'OIT reste future-proof et que l'activité normative soit toujours applicable dans notre monde du travail, notre société qui est en constante et en perpétuelle évolution.
Vous êtes là et vous participez dans la commission sur l'application des normes. Pouvez-vous nous expliquer qu'est-ce que c'est cette commission et comment ça marche?
Ce qui est remarquable dans la commission d'application des normes, c'est qu'à l'image du tripartisme de l'OIT, on examine différents cas de violation grave ou flagrante des normes sociales de l'OIT par les États membres. Et donc ce sont les États qui viennent s'expliquer sur un certain nombre de manquements qui ont été identifiés par un comité d'experts, et les employeurs examinent également le cas et posent des questions, font des recommandations aux États membres au niveau international, mais donc en collaboration avec leur fédération patronale nationale. Tout le monde peut intervenir, donc côté employeur et côté travailleur, syndicat. Donc c'est très très démocratique et constructif de pouvoir examiner un cas de violation des normes du travail dans le dialogue, dans le respect mutuel, en faisant également des conseils, en donnant des conseils aux États membres et en proposant l'assistance technique et différents moyens qui sont mis à disposition par le bureau pour faciliter le respect par les États membres de leurs engagements internationaux.
Selon vous, quel sera le rôle des normes internationales du travail pour relever les défis liés à l'avenir du travail?
Donc l'avenir du travail comporte un certain nombre d'interrogations, mais aussi d'opportunités. Donc il importe que l'OIT reste actif et relève effectivement ces défis en faisant en sorte que ces conventions soient ratifiées par le plus grand nombre d'États et soient certainement appliquées et contrôlées au sein même des États. Donc ça, c'est très important, la gouvernance nationale, parce que, par exemple, les entreprises ne peuvent pas suppléer à l'absence de gouvernance ou de respect des normes par les États. Donc l'État de droit doit être plus que jamais respecté au niveau des États membres. Alors, bon, quant à savoir si de nouvelles normes doivent intervenir, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, il faut d'abord voir quelles sont les normes qui sont dépassées, qui sont outdated, et alors voir dans le respect du tripartisme quelles sont les normes vers lesquelles on devrait s'orienter.
Selon vous, quelle sera la pertinence de l'inclusion éventuelle de la sécurité et santé au travail en tant que droit fondamental du travail?
Alors, avoir un environnement de travail sûr et sain, donc c'est vraiment un principe fondamental, effectivement, dans le cadre du monde du travail. Et ça relève de la responsabilité de l'employeur de mettre en œuvre tous les moyens, donc via une analyse de risque, toutes les mesures de prévention. Évidemment, c'est une responsabilité partagée par l'employeur, par les autorités nationales qui doivent prendre, comme je l'ai dit, les législations et également veiller à leur application. C'est aussi une responsabilité des collègues de travail de respecter les normes de sécurité et de chaque travailleur individuellement. Donc, je dirais, c'est plutôt une obligation de moyens où toutes les mesures doivent être mises en place par chacun à son niveau. Maintenant, on ne pourra jamais garantir, donc créer un droit absolu à l'absence d'accident ou à la sécurité au travail, parce que par définition, il existe un risque. Donc, c'est plutôt une obligation de moyens, une obligation de résultats, et donc nous nous posons la question de l'opportunité d'inscrire ce droit, parce que l'employeur ne pourra jamais totalement garantir l'absence de risque au travail.
That was our colleague Marco Minocri talking to some employer representatives here at the ILC about international labor standards. If you're just joining us now, we're live from the Palais des Nations. It's the third day of the International Labor Conference. If you'd like to tweet at us, share any comments on Twitter, or follow us on Facebook. Actually, we're live on Facebook. Please do so using the hashtag ILO100 or in Spanish and French, OIT100. Now we're going to talk about and show you some of the footage from the ILO Global Tour. This was a series of 24 events that were organized across the world over 24 hours. It took place on April 11th. If you'd like to see the full 24 hours or at least some of the events, you can still do so by going to the ILO website, ilo.org. But today we'd like to bring you highlights of two of those events, the ones that took place in Beijing and the one that took place in New Delhi.
China is a founding member of the International Labour Organization, and it attaches great importance to its relations with the ILO. Since China adopted the policy of opening up and reform in the last century, the relations between the two sides have been developing in breadth and depth, especially in recent years. The technical cooperation projects and exchanges between the two sides have been carried out very extensively in broad areas ranging from labor laws, employment policies, employment services, employment promotion, social security, vocational training, and social dialogue, labor inspection, almost each and every aspect in the world of work. The first project that came to my mind is the well-known SYB, that's How to Start Your Business, and IYB, How to Improve Your Business. In the late 90s of last century, China carried out large-scale economic restructuring, resulting at large numbers of workers who became laid off. Now, against this background, the ILO introduced the project into China. A lot of workers were trained in this program, and a lot of laid-off workers were helped to start up their micro businesses. And also, in this process, the government, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, developed and formed a series of policies and regulations and guidelines to facilitate the efforts of job creation. And these policies later on were formed into the active labor, active employment policies, which laid a solid foundation for the making of the law of employment promotion. Today, I think also there are some new developments. You know, China used to be a recipient country of aid from the ILO, but now we are shifting this. We are shifting our relationship with the ILO, other countries, to a third party. So we will further develop our relations with the ILO and work even more closely with the ILO and with other member countries to implement and meet the goal set in the SDG.
दो तरह के लोग हैं दुनिया में, एक पूछे क्यों और एक पूछे क्यों नहीं. दो तरह की आवाजें मैंने है सुनी, एक बंद पिंजरे में और एक है खुली. दो तरह के लोग हैं दुनिया में, एक पूछे क्यों और एक पूछे क्यों नहीं. दो तरह की आवाजें मैंने है सुनी, एक बंद पिंजरे में और एक है खुली. दो तरह की मुस्कुराहटों से मिली, एक जो सुकून दे दूसरा मुझे रुलाए. दो तरह की उल्फतें मैंने है चुनी, हर चीज की तफसीर मिलती है नहीं. बहुत सुना बहुत कहा, अब कहने को कुछ और ना रहा. सच से तुम भाग जाओगे, पर कितने दूर भाग पाओगे. पैसा नाम कमाओगे, पर जिंदगी में हार जाओगे. Cheers. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you so much. This next tune that I'll be playing is derived from a book actually that I was reading last year. And it's a book called 40 Rules of Love. And I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have heard of the poet and philosopher Rumi. Yeah? Cool. So Rumi, before he started writing poems, he was mostly known as a scholar and a philosopher, and then he made friends with a wandering dervish called Shams of Tabriz. And I fell in love with the character of Shams in the book, and this song is dedicated to the friendship between Shams and Rumi that ultimately got Shams killed, and Rumi lost half of his soul, so to speak, and then he started, shair ban gaya. He became a poet. The song is called Shams. मेरा दिल है तेरी कदमों पर, उसी के आगे सर में अपना झुकाता रहा। बंदगी तो मेरी फितरत है, हर कदम पे मैं उसी खुदा का रहा। रहूं पनाह में मेरे यार की, करता रहूं रहनुमा की दुआ। शागिर्दी की तलाश में मैं क्यों भटका सा रहा। एक मिजाजी है हम, मेरी आबरू की तरह। मन में एक ही सरगम है, तेरी सरगमों की तरह। छुपाता हूँ दिल के इन खजानों को, बिखरे हुए इन सन्नाटों से। कहूँ अगर मैं कुछ तो खोता हूँ लफ्जों को अपनी ही बातों से। ढूंढता रहूं उस आईने को जो तन्हाइयों मेरे साथ मेरा। सच यही होगा अगर होगा तो, कहो इसे ना कोई ख्वाब मेरा। एक मिजाजी है हम, मेरी आबरू की तरह। मन में एक ही सरगम है, तेरी सरगमों की तरह। Thank you. Cheers. Thank you very much. I'm not sure how much longer I have on this stage, but I don't have a job, but I do have a stage and a mic. And therefore, I think that is quite powerful. I get to speak the stories and tell the stories of other people, which I think is great. Even though I don't have a workplace, I feel like I have many, many workplaces and many, many great people to meet. Like Daksh, is the only person that I met since morning, and of course the organizing team. Thank you so much for having me. The last song is actually a tune from this movie called Rang De Basanti. And yeah, I chose this song because it has 2 chords. All right. And of course, I love it. Love the song. Anyway, here we go. If you know it, sing along. If you don't want it, enjoy it. अभी हुआ यकीन के आग है मुझ में कहीं हुई सुबह मैं जल गया सूरज को मैं निगल गया रूबरू रोशनी रूबरू रोशनी रूबरू रोशनी रूबरू रोशनी है जो गुमशुदा सा ख्वाब था वो मिल गया वो खिल गया सितारों में बदल गया रूबरू रोशनी रूबरू रोशनी रूबरू रोशनी रूबरू रोशनी है. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Those were highlights from Beijing and from Delhi of our global tour in April to celebrate the ILO's centenary. Now we're coming to you from a studio that is located in a larger communication stand. As Martin showed us on Monday, this communication area includes a virtual reality space, it includes an engagement zone and an information booth. What we haven't seen yet is that upstairs, outside the Human Rights Chamber, there's an installation. Now, this installation was prepared for the thematic forums which begin tomorrow. And of course, the thematic forums are discussions on key issues relating to the world of work, which are new to this year's ILC. Martin may be showing us a little bit later this installation, but for now, here's a short video on how these areas were put together, prepared by Fernanda Dutra.
And we have Patricia, who's got it down to an art.
start checking already on the screen. You just added the last video.
Okay, I've already video.
On a 6 ici, on a 12 bornes. Donc là maintenant, on va tout programmer de manière que ça soit vraiment prêt à l'emploi.
Yes, hi. We've been here since the morning, and we've been pretty much since then setting up this space. which will be an exhibition space during the 2 weeks of the conference. And here, as you can see, Alisa is still working on a number of presentations which we're finalizing and that we will upload on the screens that you can see over there. This is what we used to call the tunnel, and I think we still call it that. It's essentially an exhibition-like passage. Each of those screens is a touch screen. And there is one more aspect to this exhibition that I really wanted to highlight. We will have 65 or 70 different presentations displayed during the 2 weeks. And all of those are based on quite a significant amount of technical content. And all of this has been prepared exclusively in digital form, which means we have not used one single sheet of paper to prepare this presentation and to share this knowledge with a large number of delegates. Après, il y a tout ça, il y a quelques-uns qui démarrent tout seuls.
I'm holding a map, a situation map.
A piece of art.
I mean, this is our strategy.
The conference. To me, this thing looks like a battle plan and us checking the troops before the decisive date and time.
So we're setting up the stand here, and one of the central pieces will be a huge LED screen to show the social media activity around the conference. And believe it or not, this is the screen. It's still in 100 pieces, but it's going to be built overnight, and miraculously, we hope on Monday morning it will be ready to go.
Oh, this is the Department of Communications promotional area for goods, and every year we give out materials like pins and paints and other promotional items that people will take to their faraway lands, and many of them will put them on in those lands, and the ILO visibility improves like that.
My pen and pin's messed up.
Yes.
How's it going? It's going great. You can see. Take a look.
But you can have copies.
Yeah, copies.
More or less.
Hi. Hey.
They look very visible.
My role was being primarily responsible for the first and second sessions, and that those are on child labour and on freedom of association and collective bargaining. And also we had rehearsals here. It's been a lot of work and a lot of people working behind the scenes. Throughout the whole of last week we had rehearsals in this room where the coordinators of the technical coordinators of each of the different themes were in here. We ran through everything that they had to do. We're learning a lot, everything from protocol issues to where they've got to be, to lighting, to sound, to the content as well. So it's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting, and I hope a lot of people turn out.
So the constituents asked us for a dynamic, interactive, thematic forums, perhaps a little bit out of what the ILO normally does at the ILC. I have to say, if you come this week, I think you will see a number of high-level guests coming to debate and discuss issues on the future of work. I think the team has really delivered beyond our expectations. And I think this promises to be something quite innovative and outside of the ILO standing orders as we were asked.
That was a report prepared by our colleague Fernanda Dutra. Now we'd like to bring you another one of our dispatches from our roving correspondents. This is from our colleague Dia Banerjee, who caught up with some government representatives to talk about the importance of international labor standards.
Joanna, welcome to the Daily Show. We're doing these short interviews with government delegates, and Joanna is from the Department of Work and Pensions in the UK. So I'll quickly get to the interview. How important do you think are the international labour standards to set the agenda of decent work?
I think the role of the ILO in setting global standards in relation to decent work has never been more important, and the 100-year history of the ILO in decent labour standards in various aspects and developing guidance in relation to social protection globally has been essential. So many countries, such a huge audience here, the UN family has signed up to these principles, and multilateral collaboration and agreement has never been more important. The UK was delighted to be a founding member of the ILO and is delighted to be here now at this very important juncture.
Okay, that's lovely to hear. And the ILO, has launched the centenary ratification campaign. So do you think UK would be ratifying any convention in the near future?
We certainly hope, we certainly hope to agree the declaration, Centenary Declaration, which is a very important landmark for the ILO taking its agenda forward.
Yes.
Clearly, the discussion on a new convention and recommendation in relation to violence and harassment in the world of work is absolutely essential. And the UK hopes very strongly to be able to reach a form of wording for both that as many countries as possible, as well as the UK, can sign up to. We are at the start of the final negotiation, so it's all to play for. But I think our ability to find sensible compromise on wording that has longevity, will last for the future, is essential. So all eyes are on that, and we very much hope the UK can sign up to this.
Okay. And how important do you think is the role of social dialogue and tripartism in successful implementation of the labour standards?
Well, it's clearly essential. I understand the ILO is pretty exceptional as a UN agency in having a tripartite nature to the way that it does dialogue. That can make it challenging because there are many different parties to agree. However, it should be therefore the case that when we do reach agreement on an instrument, it can stick better because business and employees have already effectively signed up, at least in broad and high-level terms. So it should be more possible to then implement the very important agreements that we reach. So I think it's a very important element, and I think we should all keep putting our energy into that. All three parties do what they can to make sure it works for the future.
Yeah. And talking about future, we've had these various discussions on the future of work at the ILO and held national dialogues. How do you think the international labour standards going forward would evolve, specifically with the rapidly changing world of work?
I think that's a very good question, and it's something we've been chewing over with colleagues across the ILO and in the UK and departments in London as well. I think some of the challenges we have are in exploring exactly where the gaps are. So the ILO already has very comprehensive instruments in existence in relation to the world of work. And the question is whether there are gaps in coverage or perhaps in implementation that now need to be more closely scrutinised given the nature of work is changing. I think we are all still working out what automation of work, more artificial information and more digital platforms for work, what those really mean in terms of employers' rights and security and decent work principles. So that, for me, is the debate that we need to continue to press on. Is our existing standards suitable for the new world of work in the future?
All right, Joanna Sell, it was lovely to interview you and host you on the Daily Show that we are doing, and I wish you all the luck for the International Labour Conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hi, I am Dia Banerjee, reporting for the Daily Show. I'm with Atifa Rafat. She's the Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Labour, Pakistan, and we will be asking her a few short questions about the evolution of international labour standards and what are her thoughts on it. Atifa, welcome to the Daily Show. My first question to you is, how important do you think are the international labour standards to set the agenda of decent work?
International labour standards of ILO provide the basic guiding tools to the national governments of how fundamental labour rights must be respected by national governments, how labour legislation should evolve around institutional mechanism, enforcement mechanisms, and actually what I believe as a government responsible for protection of labour rights is that these standards, they provide the guiding tools of how gradually the national governments can improve their own national laws, gradually moving towards perfection in their own way. So they are very important.
Okay. If you can tell us our audiences that, the ILO has launched the centenary ratification campaign. So, do you think Pakistan will be ratifying some conventions in the coming years, or a convention in the coming year? And which one?
Yeah, Pakistan has already ratified 36 ILO conventions, including all the 8 fundamental co-labor standards, as we call them.
Yeah.
And right now in the government we are considering ratification of Convention 176 on health operations in the mining sector. National debate is yet to be initiated, but since 2018 we have initiated the process of discussing the protection of workers engaged in the mining sector with our social partners within our tripartite plus mechanism. I would like to add over here also that Pakistan is ratified the convention for the court and search and there's a forum where all the matters concerning the rights of workers are discussed. At least 2 to 3 times in a year, and over there we had initiated this discussion on possible ratification by Pakistan.
And how important is the role of social dialogue and tripartism in successful application?
That was our colleague Dia Banerjee catching up with government representatives to discuss international labour standards. Now, earlier on in the Daily Show, we heard from Horacio Guido about how international labour standards are formulated and how they're monitored. During the centenary year, the ILO is running a campaign to encourage all its member states to ratify at least one international labour convention during the course of 2019. To find out more, Adam Bowers spoke with Tim de Meyer, ILO Senior Advisor on Labour Law.
During its centenary year, the International Labour Organization has launched a global campaign to encourage its 187 member states to ratify at least one additional International Labour Convention. I'm joined by Tim de Meyer, who is a senior advisor in the ILO's Norms Department, to discuss the campaign a little further. Hi Tim, welcome.
Pleasure being here.
So Tim, before we start on the campaign, could you tell us first of all, what is an International Labour Standard?
An international labour standard is a form of a worldwide social contract between governments, employers and workers on things that really matter to people's daily lives, and particularly then working lives. So whether you have a minimum wage, whether you have a job to begin with, whether as a woman worker you can enter the labour force and enjoy maternity protection, whether you have a labour inspection to turn to when the employer is not complying with national labour law. On all of these things we have international labour standards.
So in fact we've got quite a lot to thank international labour standards for.
Very much so. I mean, since the last 100 years, since the beginning of our standard setting activity, international labour standards have become very entrenched in what today we call sustainable development. So for example, Sustainable Development Goal 8 that aims at the creation of full and productive employment and decent work. The labour rights that are specified in there are all benchmarked by international labour standards.
Okay, so what is the campaign this year? What are we aiming to achieve?
The campaign at heart is about seeking an endorsement from all of our member states that the way in which we have gone about promoting social justice in the world today by setting these standards on these many different topics, that is still a very valuable way for the next decades and perhaps even the next 100 years to go forward. So at heart of the campaign is we're asking all of our member states to look at their ratification records and to add at least one convention, up-to-date convention, during 2019.
Okay, and how many conventions are there, if we can say, to choose from for individual member states?
There's currently 189 conventions adopted by the conference since 1919. Now, not all of these are up to date. There's roughly 77 conventions and then 6 protocols that are considered up to date. That figure is not cast in stone because we actually do have a standards review mechanism that is looking at the extent to which standards are really up to date. But we're asking our member states to select one of those 77 and 6 protocols which they have not ratified today.
And what does it mean in practice if a country ratifies an International Labour Convention?
What it means in practice is that the state takes responsibility for ensuring that that standard is realized in law as well as in practice, so that it starts to live a life and that it starts to make an impact in gradually improving the working life of men and women around the world.
So a ratification has a direct impact on people's lives?
Absolutely, yes. The first thing that member states will do, and probably in most cases have already done before they ratify, is to look at the legislation and see if it is in compliance. And of course, legislation at the national level is something that guides people, not just from a compliance point of view, but in guiding people in what is the correct way of creating a world in which productivity can be combined with social justice. So once that is done, it starts rolling out, the changes happen, the labour market is transformed, and gradually people's lives should improve.
And thank you. And what has been the response so far from member states to the campaign?
The response has been very, very positive. We've certainly heard that in our governing body not so long ago. The ratifications are coming in. We have 20 new ratifications up until this point since the beginning of the year. That may not sound as a great number, but if you combine, as we will eventually do for the purposes of calculation, if you combine the member states that have ratified last year a convention and you combine them with those that have ratified this year, we're already looking at over 40 member states that have ratified a new convention. And of course, we anticipate, based on the information that we have, that a lot of delegations will bring an instrument of ratification to the conference.
So we're looking at the International Labour Conference as really a focal time for conventions to be ratified.
Yeah, absolutely, because that is, of course, also the only point in time during the year that we have for national tripartite delegations to come together and to share experiences also, and to exchange information on how do we do this, why is this important, should we perhaps use the next 6 months to make an extra effort and get one or two ratifications through. And of course also, given that ratification promotion is one of the core activities of the organization, really the campaign will not end on the 31st of December. We will of course hope that member states will see and will be encouraged by the results of the ratification campaign that focuses specifically on 2019.
And have any of the ILO's labour conventions had significantly more ratifications, for example? Are any of them heading for universal ratification?
The most widely ratified standards are, of course, those that are laid down in what we call the fundamental conventions, the 8 fundamental conventions that deal with issues such as freedom of association and collective bargaining, the elimination of child labour, the elimination of forced labour, and the elimination of all forms of discrimination in employment and occupation. The one that at this point is very close now to universal ratification is the Worst Forms of Child Labour Convention, which was unanimously adopted in 1999 which is exactly 20 years ago. So this would be a wonderful time to get in the last 3 ratifications that we're still missing. And there is a good chance that we will see them emerge during the conference, and if not during the conference, then very likely in the next few months to come.
That's good news. And in terms of the conference this year, we're actually seeing the first stages of a possible new convention, a new standard. There's been a 2-year process of discussion. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
The new standards that the conference will be discussing for the second time and possibly, hopefully, adopting are a convention and recommendation on violence and harassment in the world of work. So this is one topic on which in the past the ILO has been active, has been doing research, has had expert meetings, but on which we actually haven't yet set a standard. So what we hope to do with this is that member states around the world, on a tripartite basis as always, will take responsibilities for making sure, for first of all recognizing that there are various forms of violence and harassment in workplaces around the world, and that member states take responsibility for saying this is something that is ultimately not only good for not good for workers, but also ultimately also not good for employers, less productive workplaces, and take responsibility for making sure that the mechanisms are put in place to get a grip on it.
And in terms of the campaign, as we discussed, I mean, how can our viewers get updated on how the campaign's going so far?
Well, we've developed a dedicated web page with some guidance documents, some frequently asked questions, and we've also linked to that dedicated web page a dashboard. So the dashboard indicates the number of ratifications that are coming in, as well as the number of member states that are ratifying in the course of 2019. So it has a gauge, for example, and with every new member state that comes in, that the hand of that gauge goes up, and ultimately we want to see it to get to 187 by the end of the year.
Great. So if we go to www.ilo.org, we can find out all of the information.
Absolutely. Or you can search on the ILO.org for Centenary Ratification Campaign. You'll find it.
That's great. Thank you. And this is a year campaign. However, I imagine you'll be using the momentum of the campaign to go forward and pushing for more ratifications as we get into 2020 and the years beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. How that will work out in the next few years, we still need to decide. But very clearly, a lot of 2020 will, if there is a convention and recommendation adopted this year on violence and harassment, a lot will focus on that, as well as, of course, on, as always, on the fundamental conventions, ratification of the fundamental conventions, for which we have not yet seen universal ratification this year, because that remains a goal, as well as the standards that are fundamental to what we call labor market governance on employment policy, labor inspection, and tripartite consultation. So that will remain our focus.
Tim de Meyer, thank you very much.
That was our colleague Adam Bowers speaking to Tim de Meyer, ILO Senior Advisor on Labor Law. If you're just joining now, we're live from the Palais des Nations. It's the third day of the International Labor Conference. In a few minutes, we're going to be doing an interview with Beata Andres, the head of our Fundamentals branch, about child labor. Because today is World Day Against Child Labor. So if you want to start already sending in your questions via Facebook, please do so. Before we do that, we'd like to show you one of the ILO projects that we have. This one is in Colombia. It's about improving conditions in the palm oil sector. Let's take a look.
The sun blazes down on these palm trees in Colombia. They were planted here for the palm oil agribusiness. Workers have been arriving at the plantation since dawn. José Guarín is one of them. He's using a sharp knife to cut the fruit down from the trees.
Ser cortador significa que yo debo evaluar dentro de un lot.
Being a cutter means I have to assess which bunches of fruit in a given lot are ripe for harvesting. Every day, I cut down an average of 250 bunches of fruit.
Guarín and his colleagues have a tough job. What is more, in Colombia's palm oil sector, working conditions are often precarious. One of the problems is the existence of ambiguous and disguised employment relationships, such as the abusive use of subcontracting or outsourcing. But when we visit José Guarín, the news is good.
Buenas.
Direct hiring has arrived.
Para mí la contratación directa es un éxito. Desde 2006 que comencé a
For me, direct hiring is a success. Since 2006, when I started working at Palmas de Cesar, I've been hired through cooperatives and other forms of outsourcing that never allowed me to join a trade union or to discuss my job benefits.
Beneficios laborales.
At the end of 2015, a labor formalization agreement was signed with the company Palmas del Cesar, leading to the direct hiring of 225 workers. Trade union, company, and government all made an effort to achieve this tripartite agreement. René Morales of the Complaints and Grievance Committee said that formalization required a huge effort on the part of the union. Today, they're pleased to have achieved direct hiring, but he warns that much remains to be done in Colombia.
In the palm oil industry, workers are in a fairly precarious situation. We know that 80% of Colombia's palm oil workers are subcontracted in some form or another. This means that at least 30,000 workers are unlawfully subcontracted.
In the Minas region of the Department of Cesar, the Ministry of Labor and Entrepreneurs are part of a program that promotes labor formalization in the palm oil sector. The program is being carried out with ILO support as part of a project funded by the United States Department of Labor. Colombia is one of the world's principal producers of palm oil, with a yield of roughly 1.3 million tons a year, of which between 400 and 500,000 are exported, according to the manager of Palmas de Cesar, Fabio González. We asked Fabio González how labor formalization was achieved.
Fue un poco difícil la negociación.
The negotiations weren't easy, but we have to realize that it was difficult not only for the company, but also for the Ministry of Labor itself, for the workers, and for the unions, because we had to fit a lot of things into the equation.
Hay que cuadrar muchas cosas en esa ecuación.
Formalization is clearly an improvement. It's an overall improvement that brings with it new challenges, of course, but the first great outcome is labor peace.
La primera gran ganancia es la paz laboral.
A driving force behind labor formalization is the government of Colombia, which imposed steep fines in cases of ambiguous and disguised hiring. The labor formalization agreements are a form of contract created to promote direct hiring and avert the fines. According to the Deputy Minister for Labor Relations and Inspection, Enrique Borda, 100 formalization agreements have been signed, of a hoped-for total of 150.
We would like to replicate the Palmas del Cesar experience, and we are doing this in the palm oil sector everywhere in Colombia, where all palm trees are grown, and also in other sectors of the economy, like the port and hydrocarbon sectors. We are opening the doors to a new horizon for these workers, formality or direct hiring.
In the area in which José Guarín lives, over 400 palm oil workers have been formalized in the context of this project. There's still a long way to go, but this is a good beginning.
What this experience has taught us is that without direct hiring, there is no decent work. When hired directly, workers are paid better wages, they benefit from a social safety net and respect for labor rights, including freedom of association and the right to engage in collective bargaining.
José Guarín arrived in this palm oil growing area with his family in search of work and a better life.
Una capacitación que tuvimos por parte de la OIT.
We were given some instruction by the ILO, a yellow booklet on labour formalisation agreements. We started to study, and we gradually realised that we could demand our rights, and so we started going into things in greater depth.
No lo teníamos, la posibilidad de reclamar nuestros derechos.
And now that labour formalization has arrived in the form of direct hiring, he feels optimistic about the future.
Para mí, la formalización.
For me, labour formalisation gives me the possibility to make the dreams I've had for so many years come true. You see this home that I have? Now I can start saying that I can start working on a life plan. When you have a direct contract and job stability, things change for the better.
La cosa cambia.
At the ILO's work in Colombia to improve conditions in the palm oil sector. Now we have the third of our dispatches from our correspondents around the conference. Judith Carreras caught up this time with worker representatives to discuss international labor standards.
Hola, hello. This morning I had the opportunity to encounter with worker representatives to talk with them about the role of ILO in setting standards and how this has contributed to improve working conditions and towards social justice. We have talked not only about ILO and the adoptions of the conventions and recommendations, but also the application and also the role of the Committee of Applications of Standards. They have also shared their views about the role of ILO in terms of standard setting in the present and for the future, for the next 100 years. As you see, many issues for 10 minutes report. Have a seat and enjoy it.
Indeed, it's a very good historical moment to look back and take stock of what the ILO has achieved, which is a lot. Saying a lot, I mean a lot, because ILO is the only international forum where workers, employers and governments have an equal footing, an equal power of representation, and it's a completely free, open forum in a level playing field for everyone to bring their cases and discuss what's wrong in their field of activity, relating it to a series of labor standards. Labor standards are very important because they are the guideline. They are like the light that guides your activity. So whenever something is wrong, something is violated in labor standards, in the world of work, this is the forum where you can bring it, discuss it, and have some conclusions. And this goes back, it's really the work of 100 years because it's a cumulative process. Labor standards were not built in one day or in 1 week or even 1 year. To make a labor standard into a convention which is binding for the signatory countries has taken a lot of work, a lot of effort. So that now we have the 8 core conventions on very important subjects. From the trade union side point of view, it's very important. Convention 98, Convention 87, but all of them are equally important. Some of them touch on wider issues like forced labor, which is a scourge in today's world. So the ILO really gives you the space and the possibility to discuss these things and improvement with recommendations, with conclusions each year. The heart of it is the Committee of the Application of Standards, the norms, which is there where the separate cases are discussed and conclusions are reached. The ILO does have a role, first of all, looking at how the world of work is changing under the challenges of digitalization. Some people are already speaking about a fourth industrial revolution, which completely will change the way we work. It will change industrial relations. It will redefine the concept of work, because work, it won't be anymore like connected to an office, to even one employer. So there are tremendous changes which are also accelerated with the impact of globalization. So in this period of adaptation for the its centenary, the ILO is there. The ILO looks also at the environment, it looks at fair digitalization. There's a commission working on that. So this is hope for the future. ILO will help us adapt. I would like also to touch upon a very recent experience we had in Greece, because we were under an economic adjustment program following the economic crisis, a program imposed on Greece by the Troika, composed by the European Commission, the IMF and the European Central Bank. And apart from the economic measures, the austerity measures, there were a series of measures at the request of our creditors that really hit hard on core labor standards, and they upset our institutional legal setting, like the minimum wage, like collective bargaining. So we had very, for the workers, it was very tough. It is still very tough. Since 2010, we have been complaining to the ILO. Our case has been successively discussed. We got very good conclusions, asking the governments to take care and take into consideration our concerns, consider social dialogue. And the ILO also opened a liaison office in Athens, which was also very helpful. And we had a lot of technical assistance. Technical assistance is another way of how the ILO helps countries and workers, employers deal with the big challenges, domestic challenges they address. So I think this is something which really, gives another light into how we should appreciate the ILO. If it weren't for the ILO, it would be us, some workers, discussing our problems vis-à-vis the Troika between ourselves in our conventions. With the ILO, we were able to sit down, we implemented technical projects together with the employers, and this helped a lot.
D'entrée de jeu, ce que nous pouvons affirmer, c'est que s'il n'y avait pas l'Organisation internationale du travail, avec à sa tête le Bureau international du travail, nous sommes sûrs que la situation des travailleurs serait pire que ce qu'il en est aujourd'hui. C'est pour dire d'emblée que nous devons saluer le rôle que l'Organisation internationale du travail avec le BIT joue, surtout dans l'élaboration des conventions et leur suivi en termes d'application. C'est pourquoi la commission de l'application des normes est une structure que nous devons préserver. Nous, au niveau des travailleurs, c'est l'instance qui nous permet quand même de pouvoir poser les problèmes que nous rencontrons et de pouvoir trouver une oreille attentive auprès de l'OIT. Alors, il est vrai que ce que nous souhaiterons avoir n'est pas encore le niveau atteint, mais c'est une question de parcours, de processus. Nous ne pouvons que chaque fois saisir cette occasion pour pouvoir vraiment pousser à l'amélioration des conditions, parce que c'est les normes qui nous permettent sur le plan international de pouvoir descendre sur le national et que les pays qui ratifient puissent faire l'application. Je sais que mon pays, le Togo, a ratifié un certain nombre de conventions, surtout les fondamentales ont été ratifiées. Et nous nous saisissons quand on est au pays et quand il y a des conflits, nous nous reposons sur ces conventions pour pouvoir travailler. Et donc, nous allons nous battre comme on le fait depuis pour que toutes les conventions nous soient garanties. Et nous saluons effectivement le rôle que la Commission de l'application des normes joue dans le suivi et l'amélioration de ces tests. Et maintenant, il faut que le BIT, toujours avec les experts et les compétences, arrive à identifier les nouveaux problèmes, les nouvelles situations qui se posent, de sorte que, comme on le fait, on puisse toujours proposer de nouvelles conventions à même de rendre plus harmonieuses les relations de travail et éviter les conflits dans la mesure du possible.
Bueno, para nosotros la OIT ha sido un valor fundamental en cuanto a la vigencia de los convenios fundamentales y nuestras realidades nacionales. No podemos desconocer la importancia que tienen los convenios internacionales de la OIT para aquellos países que tenemos que tener una legislación que se va a ir adecuando en un momento donde en ese momento los convenios serán nuestra ley. Ahora, en definitiva, también la OIT tiene que pensar que tiene que replantear su rol, porque además de promover los convenios fundamentales, esperemos que este año tengamos un nuevo convenio contra violencia y abuso laboral y acoso. Realmente nosotros lo que creemos es que es muy importante la vigencia de los derechos fundamentales, de los principios y convenios, pero sobre todo el sistema de supervisión de las normas, el control que podemos hacer de la aplicación de las normas en las realidades nacionales. Este año, por supuesto, son los 100 años como para hacer un repaso de lo que estuvimos haciendo, pero también para replantearnos el futuro del trabajo o el trabajo del futuro y cómo estos convenios nos pueden proteger, sobre todo porque en muchos de nuestros países hay ataque a las normativas sociolaborales y ahí la OIT tiene que replantear su rol para fortalecer nuevamente la vigencia de los derechos laborales.
Our colleague Judith Carrera speaking to some workers' delegates here at the ILC. And like we said at the beginning of this show, today's World Day Against Child Labor. It's a great day for the ILO. And with us we have a special guest, Beata Andres. She's the chief of the Fundamental Principles and Rights of Work branch of the ILO. Beata, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you for being with us. Today, as we celebrate World Day Against Child Labor, we know that the protection of children's rights has been one of the priorities of the ILO since 1919, since the foundation of the ILO. What is the significance of this date globally?
Well, first of all, the date marks the adoption of a landmark treaty, the Worst Forms of Child Labor Convention number 182, 20 years ago of this date today. And an instrument, by the way, that has seen the fastest ratification rate in ILO's history and is nearing universal ratification very soon. So that, I think, in itself is a reason to celebrate. In addition, the World Day Against Child Labor has really helped galvanize the movement that was created leading to the adoption of Convention 182. We see today events organized in all parts of the world